Hello and welcome to the Apple, iPhone, iOS voiceover compatible games interview series. Apple, iPhone, iOS voiceover compatible games is a group that is focused on all things about mobile accessible gaming, and through our interview series, we interview game developers as well as accessibility influencers about the state of accessible gaming. And today we have Ben Bayliss from Can I Play That, a website that is dedicated about connecting people with disabilities to games that they can play. And Ben, welcome to the group.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
So Ben, I always like to kind of start off the interview series by having the person that I'm interviewing just say a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what is kind of your role in accessible gaming.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I am Ben Bayliss, editor-in-chief at caniplaythat.com. I am a white male with short brown hair, dark frame glasses, stubble, and a sweaty forehead because it's a heat wave in the UK currently. I focus my journalistic role on covering accessibility in video games, and I also do side work as a publisher currently, and of which I am implementing accessibility accommodations within when working with developers.
And how did you get started in that type of work?
Yeah, so originally, years and years ago, I was doing YouTube content where I was advocating for myself, educating my audience about deafness, and those did really well. Years passed, and I ended up writing about gaming just as a hobby. Mm-hmm. That was when I got into a job role with journalistic.com, and we were doing like the usual video game outlet, news, reviews, features. They ended up letting me report on accessibility coverage, without question, which was fantastic. That opened the door to a lot more interactions for myself with people in the disability community. And eventually I reached out to Can I Play That and pitched a story, and that kind of like led into, hey Ben, do you want to be an editor? Can I Play That? I was like, yeah, okay.
So Can I Play That had already been an established entity before you joined them?
Sorry, Can I Play That?
Can I Play That had already existed. It was already doing things before you joined them.
Yes, Can I Play That was already a good few years into existence at this point. It originally started with Susan Banks and Courtney Craven running it. It started off as a blog, which turned into doing accessibility reviews, specifically deaf and hard of hearing reviews, which is completely underrepresented content across the industry. Like nobody was doing that. The website gained popularity, and unfortunately, after Susan's passing, Courtney took on the website and started building a team of writers. And that's pretty much where I came in. Fast forward to this year, we've just finished a deal with Data System, which has now acquired Can I Play That? So we've got a bit more financial backing, and the industry is finally starting to see Can I Play That as a decent resource and a website out there in journalism world.
Yeah, I mean, what I particularly like about the site is, I'm kind of, since I'm blind, I'm focused on, blind accessible gaming, but Can I Play That is, beyond that. I mean, it's talking about people with, hearing disabilities, motor issues. It's kind of across all of the spectrum that you're trying to, connect people with games that they can play and inform them about games they can play.
Yeah, definitely. We do a lot of accessibility reviews, as you said, across different spectrums. And with the Data System acquisition, we've also got more writers coming on now to kind of enhance that output. We've got other things such as features, which can be anything from impressions on the game that hasn't fully launched yet, commentary on industry happenings. So like recently there's been Electronic Arts, or EA, representing neurodiversity in the new update, and that's caused a little bit of controversy amongst different communities. We also have a why and how disabled players play games, which is usually from freelancers that come in. We also have resources such as reference guides and our new menu deep dives that go hand in hand with our brand new codex system, which is supposed to be, it's got currently over 250 games that has like all the information that you can find about a game's specific, accessibility, specific websites, contacts, and such.
For all the game, for those 250 games that you cover, are you seeking the games out? Like you found out, oh, this game has some accessibility, let me reach out to them, or are people starting to reach out to you and saying, hey, we have accessibility, would you cover it on your page and let people know about it? Like, or is it both?
Yeah, so usually it's kind of like a mixture of various different sources coming to us. Like, for example, it can be just me seeing a Steam patch notes for a game, having a look through them, and then there's information that a developer hasn't specifically indicated could be accessibility focused, but it can also work for accessibility. We get emails from PR, from publishers, from developers themselves who reach out and they say, here's a game, we can provide you a code, it's got so-and-so accessibility, it doesn't have accessibility. And also just general social media chatterings that's going on in the world, just keeping an eye on all of that, really.
So, over the years, how long have you been with Can I Play That?
Since 2019, I was there, I think, a month before The Last of Us Part 2 launched, and it was a busy time, let's just say that.
Sure. All right, so that's great. So over the past 3 years, have you seen more momentum and more games reaching out and saying that we have accessibility? Please take a look at our game. Have you seen more accessibility content coming through over the past 3 years?
You mean in terms of people reaching out to Can I Play That for coverage?
Yeah, or just games in general. I mean, I would say Last of Us Part 2 is kind of an interesting turning point where I think accessibility became a lot more mainstream and in the eye of mainstream developers. And so I would think over the past 3 years that you're seeing more and more games actually incorporating accessibility into their games.
Yes, definitely. There are certainly a lot of games that are keeping accessibility in mind, whether or not that's for the start of production or whether they're saying, hey, let's update it. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition is a good example. They've recently released the game and then they did a massive post-launch patch which added even more features to the game. So there's indie developers and AAA developers that are kind of working and realizing the importance of accessibility. And when people reach out to Can I Play That, we are getting specific emails. It's not like a general template that's being sent out to all press. It's a personalized email that's like, hey, can I play this game? We want to give you a review code. It's got this bunch of accessibility settings. We'd love for you to have a look at it and give us your thoughts. So it's definitely a positive shift.
You kind of mentioned it before in the list of content that you have on the website. You have an interesting featured section, which is really coming from I think the people who utilize your website, which is a feature that's called Why I Play. And it's basically people with disabilities kind of writing about their gaming journey. So you kind of talk a little bit more about that particular feature and why you guys decided to incorporate that as part of the website.
Yeah, so this was actually a series that was in place when Courtney was still there. And honestly, it's been really nice to see because it really opens up like not only our eyes, but the community's eyes to how, people play games, the different barriers that people face, and the different ways in which they play games. And they've kind of like, it's allowed players to focus on explaining all of that. Not only that, but it also acts as a way for developers and producers to look at how other players are playing games, kind of use that in their, perhaps, I don't know, seeking permission to get user research going, consultancy going. So I think it's really good to have on the site.
The website, again, for the content of the games, the 250 games, that you've reviewed or looked at, kind of how do those break down versus, PCs, consoles, mobile?
I think we are primarily focused at the moment on PC and consoles. Mobile has been something that we've been, I guess I could say, dipping toes into. But we've had the news posts that we've done on Activision Blizzard's Diablo and Mortal, I think it was. Is it Mortal?
Say it again, mobile?
The Activision Blizzard's Diablo and Mortal, I think. The
Immortal,
recent,
yes,
yeah,
on the mobile phone, yes.
yeah. So we are kind of moving into mobile territory now, especially in regards to technology and accessibility, because we've realized that where we can cover games, people need to know whether technology is also accessible. And so we're kind of like expanding right now, and it's kind of slowly growing. We're working on some stuff in the back end, but at the moment it is PC and console focused.
So, over your time kind of covering accessibility in gaming, what accessibility feature has come into place that you think has kind of revolutionized and really opened up gaming to, whether it be the deaf community or the blind community or, people with mobility issues? What kind of accessibility feature do you think has really helped make more games actually accessible to gamers?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I got most of it, and it kind of broke up.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just saying, what accessibility feature has come out in the last couple of years that you think has really, been the best feature to help people access more games?
Okay. Well, I think there's definitely a very wide range of features that have come out. I think probably the biggest one would, I know it's kind of everybody's go-to, but The Last of Us Part 2 is high contrast mode and navigational ping. Helping, totally blind players play the game was amazing to see. And now with The Last of Us Part 1 coming out with descriptive cinematics, that's going to be good, I hope. So I'm excited to see that. But there's also been when I started at Joe Sacker's talking about accessibility, at the time, Ubisoft was doing a lot for deaf and hard of hearing accessibility. So for me, it was just great to see so many features coming out, such as customizable subtitles, directionality with waypoints, and particularly my favorite is Apex Legends from EA, which implemented the ping system, just because that means I don't have to talk to anybody who's struggling to hear them. So, just fire a ping and away they go.
And, when we talk about accessibility, and so there's been quite a few advancements that have happened with accessibility. What do you think the roadblocks are of accessibility? What has prevented, all developers from including accessibility into their games?
So I think this is a mixture of different things, because there is a really good positive push going on. Accessibility is probably the best it's been in years. There is definitely a lot of toxicity from players who don't understand accessibility, and will openly attack disabled people on socials and then complain to studios because those features are being included and developers going woke and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of somewhat of a roadblock, because there are people who are causing that hostility that could, be pushing developers away from that. I also think that there's a lot of misreporting going on in terms of, the bigger outlets. They understand that accessibility is important for their website. They understand that it's going to hit that popularity, the trend in the SEO, but the way that some websites report it is just incorrect, and sometimes it can kind of always come back down to a, I don't know, difficulty discourse, unfortunately. And it's just unfortunate to see. But if they hired or actually researched into accessibility and got disabled players' feedback and understood how features work, and that it's not just the settings menu, it's also how things come across in gameplay, then maybe coverage would change and developers would be more open for bragging about accessibility early on in marketing and promotions.
Yeah, I find it I find it interesting of when there's backlash about, accessibility features and you're making the game too easy when it's a single player game. Because, if I decide to turn on all the accessibility features, that doesn't impact that person's single game experience. You know what I mean? So I never understood where people, with Last of Us Part 2 were upset about it, or, whatever other single player game. Maybe if it's a multiplayer game and you feel like the person's getting an unfair advantage, against you, that's one thing. But, it seems to be kind of across the board that they get upset about it, which I never really understood, particularly around single player games, why they get upset about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So with all of those kind of items that might be potential roadblocks, what can we as people in the industry who are trying to bring attention to accessibility, or people who are gamers, what can they do to help clear those roadblocks or help educate other gamers or game developers around accessibility?
So I think in terms of toxicity, pick your battles, because there are some people I know who will just troll. They don't really care about being educated. The way that I handle it is I will talk with somebody, perhaps sarcastically, perhaps professionally, but I will communicate with them, explain why a feature is important, give them examples of why it's important. Sometimes I'll just completely tear down their ideas. For example, when you get games such as From Software games, Elden Ring and Dark Souls, people will always fall back to a disabled player who completed the game with, just a button. And I'm just like, you do realize that player said that they don't want to be idolized in that way, because they understand that everybody else has different ways of playing and different barriers that they face. I think it's definitely a choice just choosing the battles, but I think the most important thing is providing feedback to developers, whether that's on socials, whether that's on forums, whether it's reaching out through email contacts or support. I think developers are wanting to work with players, and sometimes they struggle to find those who are willing to participate in user research and consultancy. And doing so kind of like opens you up to being contacted again, like, hey, so we noticed your feedback, would you like to be invited on by our user research team? Or companies such as Team 17 who have started up their own UX and UI division, I think it's called. So there's a lot that can be done. It's just important not to, I guess, make demands from developers, because familiarize yourself with game development processes and understand that sometimes just demanding a certain feature can probably completely unravel a whole spider web of problems in development. So just be aware of stuff like that.
Right. So Ben, have you been able to attend any of the gaming conferences or been on any panels of any gaming conferences?
Yes, I have actually been involved in GA-Conf. I was doing a panel about just deathless in video games, talking about the barriers that I faced. Personally, I'd probably like to do more of them. The only reason that I haven't is because of my disability, because being deaf, I feel uncomfortable being with a group of people, trying to hear what they're saying, trying to talk about it. And I feel like I'm kind of doing myself a disservice, because I could be speaking to a wide a group of developers, a group of viewers, and it is something that I would like to do. I actually did something for it was something to do with the European Summit and accessibility and how video games can be part of this government thing. I've forgotten what it was now, but it was good. It was a nice experience and quite accommodating because the company themselves were very open about providing accessibility features like subtitles and audio descriptions and stuff. So it was nice to be a part of that. It's just unfortunately, I know a lot of panels out there like PAX and I know Gamescom or something like that. They don't really have that much there for those who are willing to sit down and talk.
With GAConf, did they approach you, or did you reach out to them and say you had a panel idea?
Yeah, so with GAConf, I'm actually I'm friends with one of the organizers, both of the organizers, Ian and Tara. And I think Ian reached out to me one day saying, so we've got a panel coming up, GAConf EU, you're in the UK, would you be interested in taking part? And I was just like, yeah, sure. So went ahead and did that.
So when you did that conference, what was kind of the most memorable part of that experience of being on the panel and talking about deaf accessibility in gaming?
Sorry, you cut out again now. What does that say?
I just said, what was the best part about being on that panel? Like, what was the most memorable thing about participating in a conference about deaf accessibility or a panel about deaf accessibility?
Okay. Yeah. So it's just the fact that you can sit down with a group of people and talk about something that you're all passionate about. Like, I spend a lot of my time writing about video game accessibility on my own in a room, working from home. It can get pretty much like a chamber. I just talk to myself really, and I put the words out there for the public. But it's nice to actually sit there and hear everybody's different ideas about some of their different experiences. Perhaps I think the interesting thing was before the recording for that panel started, we had a conversation being the panelists about wearing headphones, because I was wearing headphones, but somebody else at the panel wasn't able to wear headphones. We were just talking about a different experience, like hearing aids and cochlear implants, and it's just stuff like that that kind of makes it like the whole sermon interesting and opens you up to new experiences and various disabilities.
Right, learning how other people are doing it or handling issues.
Yes, yeah.
I found in various settings when I've been around a lot of blind people, as a person who is newly blind, I'm still learning a lot. And when I get to be in a room with 10 or 15 blind people, I'll learn more in 30 minutes from those people of just how they're living their lives than I do on my own, over weeks of trying to research things. So that would be a great experience to have other people to engage with. With Can I Play That, with the website, what do you think is your biggest contribution to advancing the accessibility movement?
So I do like to think that we do personally get emails from developers and studios themselves saying, thank you for covering this game. Sometimes it's whether they provided a review code for us or whether we just done it, out of pocket just because we wanted to cover something. And we'll have like studios reach out and they'll thank us for it, and they'll say that all of our notes have been taken on board. And like a couple of months later, maybe a year later, there's an update. I think an example would be Resident Evil Village. That launched and it had awful subtitles. Can I Play That did a review that kind of like bashed the subtitles, and while Capcom themselves didn't reach out to us, the backlash that came off the back of that review ended up with the company a year later pushing an update that is adding subtitles and customization. So that's nice to see. I also like to think that we're kind of showing the journalism industry how it can be done. as I mentioned earlier, like websites that want to cover accessibility seem to do so because it's trending, it's SEO, the getting the negative comments just for feedback, not feedback, traffic, sorry. And it's almost like they're never sure how to cover accessibility or where to find coverage. But me being able to kind of play that for how long I've been with, can I play that? We find accessibility news in patches and big updates. We find it by reaching out personally to studios and asking questions. We look at interviews from other outlets. So there's information everywhere that can be done. And I like to think that kind of play that is saying you can do accessibility journalism, you can have accessibility coverage experts, and you need to start hiring disabled people at your outlets and making those job roles available.
When you have a game that you're providing a review about its accessibility, and let's say they've given you a game code, or you just know the developer from some past experience of working with them, how hard is it to, have to give negative criticism about, this is really not up to snuff, when you have this kind of relationship with them, or they've been generous to give you a code, or just the fact that they are trying and you don't want to discourage them by totally trashing them. How do you kind of balance out giving good critiques, but also making them feel good about their effort in the first place?
Interesting question, because personally, when we're doing reviews, I will encourage all of our writers to be as unbiased as possible. Like, for every bias that you have out the window, critique the game and be honest about it. And what we found is studios and individual developers are actually really appreciative of that, because maybe there have been internal complications that they wanted to do stuff in the game, but they haven't been able to. And us providing this feedback is like ammunition that they can use. And if I have something negative to say, I'll say it. I'll just send a review back to whoever issued the review code, and I'll just say, here's a review, scored this, critiques in the review itself. Any questions, let me know. And it doesn't seem to impact our relationship, because I like to think that everyone just understands that we're just doing our job, they're doing their job, and we're just providing the information that can be useful for them. And it's just a professional relationship. I don't think I've really had anybody reach out and say, like, I don't agree with your review, so can you
How dare you? Yeah.
change it? How dare you?
So of all the the games that you've reviewed and played, has there been one that's been a standout, enjoyable experience for you, that you said this is a great accessible experience of gaming?
In gaming in general?
Yeah, was there a particular game that you thought was a great accessible experience?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just going to go back to Apex Legends. It was the first online battle royale game that I actually felt that I could participate in. I played PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, wanting to enjoy it, but I couldn't. There were other games that came out, like Fortnite. Wanted to enjoy that, but I couldn't get on with it. Even though they added the visualization wheel on the screen, that was a good touch, but it still didn't bring me back. But it was nice to have. But Apex Legends' ping system was just revolutionary for me, because I could actually feel like if I jump into a battle royale game, right? Usually, I just follow people. I'm just like, oh gosh, where are we going? Where are we going? Bang, 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 bang. But with Apex Legends, I'm leading the team, because I feel like I have that confidence there, because I have that communication there, and my disability communication barrier isn't present. I don't have to struggle to hear somebody else. I don't have to feel like I'm going to get told off for doing something in the game.
So
So,
for those who might not know, can you describe what is the ping system?
so the ping system in Apex Legends was something that EA patented, and other games such as Fortnite have started using it. And what it is you can, with a press of a button, ping an item or an object or a location, or press and hold it, and it brings up a command wheel. So if I am running towards an area surrounded by buildings and there's a specific crate outside the building, I can ping that crate and my character will turn around and say, supply chest over there. But I can open that crate and there's a group of like 3 items. I can ping every single one of them, and there's an audio prompt for all of them, including subtitles. And it's like, Spitfire here, heavy ammo here. And you could just do that with anything. You could do it with doors. You could press and hold it, send a command, say enemy over there, keep him watch here.
So for you, as a person who's deaf, it gets away from having to listen to someone do that over a mic. It's now kind of displaying it on screen for you, and allows you to, kind of control that on screen with words as opposed to over the headset.
Yes, mostly because when I play online games, like I don't think this is like mostly the problem with players, but it's like the hardware. Like there are like some cheap headsets out there that sound like really distorted and
Right.
hard to hear, and it just basically makes me not want to play it because I end up, I while I can't hear the command they're giving out, I can hear them saying things like, "What are you doing? Get here! Stop messing around! Get here!" And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, sorry. It's just awkward.
Um, for kind of multiplayer games like that, is like, do you have more success on a multiplayer game where it's everybody for themselves, because then you're not really doing coordination? Is it harder when it's a multiplayer game and you're working as a team, and that trying to coordinate is a little bit more difficult because you can't hear what people are maybe saying over the microphone for everyone to do?
Um, what do you mean, sorry?
So I'm trying to figure out on, for a deaf experience of playing a multiplayer game, if you were just playing by yourself, you weren't coordinating with anybody else, you were just running around shooting the people that you were shooting. I would imagine that's easier to do because you have a lot of visual cues, and you don't have to listen to other people say, let's go into that house or let's attack this person. When it's a multiplayer game where you're on a team and everybody's trying to coordinate, I imagine that's a little bit more difficult unless you have something like the Apex Legend ping system, because you're trying to hear over your headset the coordination, which might get garbled or might be people talking over each other, and it might be just more difficult as a deaf person to try to decipher what needs to happen. So I'm
Got you.
just so I'm just saying that two different kind of multiplayer game experiences. Is the multiplayer experience when it's just you easier than the multiplayer experience when you're on a team?
Yeah, so I think really it depends on how in-game visualizations are working. So for example, with Apex Legends, I can play solos, um, but I still feel somewhat lost because there's not that much directionality on the screen itself. Um, but for example, Fortnite is a game that I will occasionally pick up and I will play on my own in solos. And I feel like I can play that more comfortably alone because of the visualization wheel that appears at the screen, and any surrounding key sounds such as footsteps, gunfire will be indicated by an icon and an amplitude audio wave sort of a visualization. So I've got that directionality there on screen to help me with understanding my 3D sound.
Gotcha. What gaming experience is not accessible to you that you wish was?
Ooh. Uh, Gaming experience that I wish was accessible, but I wish was.
Yeah, like what game is out there that you wish you could play and just it doesn't work for you?
It's going to be awkward to say, but Elden Ring,
Hmm.
because there was so much hype about that game. Everybody wanted it. It's like, oh yeah, it's been created. Game of Thrones guy who's at George R. R. Martin, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, I really want to play this because the lore, the story, the world, it sounds amazing. I would love to play it. And then I got the game and tried playing it, and the control scheme, the directionality, the deaf hardware accessibility, which just wasn't there for me. The subtitles weren't great. Um, it was confusing in terms of like keeping track of missions at the time, and just basically the whole experience for me without a ring was not good. But I just wanted to enjoy it. I never could. So unfortunately, I missed out on that amazing story. But I suppose I could just sit and watch,
Right.
Let's
On
Plays or
YouTube.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For are kind of the big things for a deaf gamer, is it, you want to have good subtitle situation, you want good directional indicators, whether it be, you know, uh, you know, you're being attacked from the right or the left, or, things like that. Are those the two primary things that you're kind of seeking, or what other accessibility features are useful for deaf players?
Yeah. So all of the above. But I also think like having subtitles that you can customize and increase in terms of heads-up display size. But no, sorry, increase in terms of background and text size. But I also want to see games start to incorporate a heads-up display resize system, because there are players who have low vision, that, yeah, myself included, and I can't see what the game's called large subtitles. It's usually like, oh yeah, this is the large subtitle, but it's actually really, really tiny. And then I want to read the HUD elements, and I can't do that because they're too far away or they're not legible. And it's just there's a lot of different factors there, but I do think that subtitles and directionality are key systems there.
Earlier in the interview, you said, you do your work as an editor for Can I Play That? But you said you do some publishing work as well. Will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I do. So I work with an indie game publisher, and what I tend to do is the usual publishing duties, such as helping get like the game information on storefronts and such. One of the things that we've been doing is mentioning accessibility features on the store page itself, so the players don't have to purchase the game to find out they can't play it, or that certain features aren't there. And I'm also incorporating like user research experience that I've got, and working with developers to provide internal, accessibility information so that they can work on accessibility features if they've got like the development time and resources. So it's that's what I've been doing with them.
And have you some games come out, or would there be any titles that we would recognize?
There's been we've recently started pushing a lot of games onto the Epic Games Store. We're starting to move on to publishing games on consoles, potentially later in the year, early next year. So in terms of games, I think one of the games that I helped work with a developer on accessibility was one that's called Beku. That's Beku. That's just a 2D platformer which you play as a knight or an archer or a hunter. They have been tasked by the king to kill a bunch of things constantly, get like souls and earn achievements. But when I worked with the developer, I was just like, okay, here are some areas that you could improve in terms of accessibility. And we ended up implementing like text rescaling and HUD rescaling and actual in-game zoom. So rather than having a set like view, the player can choose to zoom in a little bit more.
What do you think is the kind of next wave of accessibility features that might come in? I know there's some audio description. You mentioned that earlier. I'm pretty excited about that. Not only for audio description to be on cut scenes, but maybe actually make it into the game as you're traversing around, being able to activate some sort of audio description to describe the world. But what features do you think are coming that we can look forward to for accessibility?
It has benefit that's coming. What I would hope to see.
Yes.
Well, I definitely think we could do with more audio description in general, in terms of both in-game audio description, cinematic audio description, and it would also be nice to see more games just utilize menu description in general. I think that PlayStation particularly needs to start supporting third-party hardware for control schemes. I know that they've got a bunch of games that are coming out on PC, or already have come out on PC. And, it would be nice for players to be able to do more remapping in games in general, just add remapping so players can make their setup how they want. And as always, for me with deaf accessibility, it's just I just want subtitles that are actually large and legible. When I go into a settings menu and I choose large subtitles, I want them to be large. I don't want them to be like.
It seems like it should be so easy, right? Like, why is this still a challenge in 2022? You know what I mean? It seems like that should be low-hanging fruit for them to be able to put in subtitles and have you change the font and boldness of the subtitle if you so desire. I mean, that seems like it should be pretty easy.
Yeah, definitely. I do like putting the bold fonts on, especially. I found myself doing that with a lot of games recently. I think I was playing Horizon Forbidden West, and the subtitles just weren't readable. I had to practically sit on the floor like I used to be when I was a kid playing games, and I was just struggling to see them. It's just like, oh, come on, hit the bigger.
So, I always like to kind of close out the interview with just any thoughts that you have on the current or future state of accessibility, or any advice you have for gamers who are looking to get into gaming but might be kind of a little scared or nervous about doing it because of their accessibility issues.
You mean just jumping into a game as a new gamer?
Yeah, as a new gamer, who has an accessibility issue, might be a little, I can't play games because I'm blind. I can't play games because I'm deaf. There's a lot of accessibility out there for us. What would you advise people who might kind of feel that way?
Yeah, so I think it definitely would come down to just looking around online. Accessibility coverage is happening in places outside of kind of playing that. Kind of play that we can provide you with menu deep dives, where this is a series that I started up which looks into everything you can find in the settings menu, from gameplay, audio, visual, accessibility, everything is there. But in terms of everywhere else, you can probably find players at YouTube is now doing videos that will run through the settings menu, so you can see what's there, you can see what the gameplay is like. You can also keep an eye on streamers. Like if you've got a particular Twitch streamer that you enjoy watching, ask them in the chat. Just ask them to have a look and say you're interested in looking at the game. What do they think of it in terms of accessibility? And if they don't know what accessibility is, then that could be a good learning point for them and could open up their audience as well. I think there's just a lot of different ways that you can find information online now, and studios such as Sony Interactive Entertainment, EA, Ubisoft, and Square Enix, they've basically started doing their own websites for each game dedicated to explaining what accessibility that you can find in games.
Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time to participate in the interview series. We're going to share the links to the website Can I Play That, which has great content and articles and news, information about accessibility, reviews, deep dives, as you were mentioning. and a lot of great content for those who are seeking and trying to find games that, kind of match up with their particular disability needs. So I really appreciate you taking the time and all the effort that you're putting forth and trying to advance accessibility in gaming.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a lovely chat. Despite the UK heatwave, it's been a lovely chat.
Yes. Well, stay cool. And thank you very much for coming out and talking to us.
Thank you.